one of the first generation Tibetans born here in Santa Fe to parents who are Tibetan refugees from Tibet, and she'll share her experience as a Tibetan American.
Probably next Thursday. Yeah, what if you can go on Thursday?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sonam Ravgay, and I'm a 505 native and proud Tibetan American. I would like to start by thanking everyone who's gathered here today on the 60th anniversary of China's illegal occupation of Tibet. It is always so encouraging to see support from the community, and it is a large part of why grassroots activism is so important. Being Tibetan American shapes your outlook on life. The issue of identity is a constant internal struggle that many of us face. As we reflect on the 60th anniversary of Tibet's freedom struggle, we also come to terms of how diaspora has affected the generations born post-genocide. Majority of people my age and younger have never stepped foot in Tibet. We, from a young age, are taught to yearn for an ancestral land we have never known. Growing up can be difficult when you never quite see your identity reflected in the mainstream media and public sphere. You may be mislabeled as Chinese or ethnically ambiguous. Your home-cooked meals may bring stares. Speaking with your parents in our native tongue may bring questions. Differences in class and wealth may compound these feeling different even further. However, there'll not be a second thought when you see appropriation of your heritage, a commercialized shadow of your identity, packaged and sold as intellectual enrichment or self-improvement. We can see our culture, our religion, our very way of life, on one hand, being profited off of, but on the other, if we ourselves practice Tibetan values and way of life, we may be labeled as other or un-American. I wonder, how far must we assimilate in order for us to be considered real Americans? Must we trade in our past in order to be accepted? Do our physical features, accent, mother tongue automatically preclude us from entry to civil society? Of course not. If we give credence to these damaging notions of citizenship, we will lose ourselves. Also, while we may encounter some people who perpetuate these damaging notions, that is not everyone we meet. In fact, I say the vast majority of people are accepting of diversity, and we should not let these negative experiences shape or discourage us. As citizens of this country, we have unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We cannot afford to trade in our identity or our past for what will our future look like. Right now, in Tibet, Tibetans are dying in a human rights struggle in order to maintain their identity. While today in China, they're implementing a one-language policy of promoting Mandarin Chinese while suppressing Tibetan, Mongol, Uyghur, and Manchu languages. Even Chinese TV soap operas produced in Tibet, which used to be in Tibetan, spoken with the Chinese intonation, are now exclusively in Chinese. A rising number of mainland Chinese university students in Canada, Australia, and the US are going after Tibetans and Uyghurs for speaking up for human rights, or for simply engaging with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I recently came across a poem that spoke to me about the experiences of being an immigrant. Titled First Generation Immigrant by Indian-Canadian poet Rupi Kaur, she says, "They have no idea what it's like to lose home at the risk of never finding home again, have your entire life split between lands and become the bridge between countries. We are all bridges to a land we may never enter. However, just because we have not been there does not mean we may never go, or that we shouldn't lay the groundwork for others to go. Being this bridge, being Tibetan American, means having your entire life politicized. To be a child of parents and grandparents who lived through genocide means inheriting a struggle that is long waged before we were born. It means constant vigilance. And while, as a Tibetan-born post-invasion, I may never know first-hand experience of how this struggle began, Today with us are people who are intimately aware of what happened during China's occupation. Our grandparents, our parents, their trauma is our inherited trauma. And what they lived through was the colonization of their land. And what we currently live in is a post-colonization period. And now, of course, we may look at this and walk away. But however, as someone who's been attending these marches since I was a baby, this is not a movement I want to walk away from. The only difference that separates me from Tibetans living in Tibet is that my family was able to escape and survive. I continue to fight for the ones whose lives have been lost and to ensure we do not lose more. My path in helping Tibet led me to political activism. In undergraduate, I spent 4 years working with students for Free Tibet at Mount Holyoke College. I was president of the chapter for 3. The culmination of my efforts led me to Washington, D.C., where I was a part of a nationwide group who lobbied our Congress in order to ask them to fund their support for Tibet-related bills and funding. In fact, a bill I lobbied for, the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act, was recently signed into law with bipartisan support. The act is intended to promote better access to Tibet for U.S. officials, journalists, NGOs, and citizens. Activism for social change has taught me that while championing for change is by no means an easy or linear progression, it can be done. However, the opponent for this progress is certainly a powerful one. China is guilty of not only authoritarian control over Tibet, but of East Turkestan and Hong Kong. They consistently threaten Taiwan. They're engaged in a constant territorial battle over the South China Sea, and they are accused of encroachment into African affairs, to name a few. They also contribute the highest amount of pollution to our planet, although it is important to note that the U.S. is also in the top 3. China has money and military power, but we have justice and friends of Tibet. We are on a ticking timeline. The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics are up ahead. As history has shown, as the Olympics draw closer, China will only become more authoritarian. This past Tibetan New Year, President Xi forced Tibetans to include his photos in their temple, essentially deifying himself. And as you may be aware now, at least 153 Tibetans have committed self-immolation as a form of non-violent protest against China's human rights abuses. The Chinese government labeled these people as terrorists, and for those who do not die, they face persecution, torture, and inevitable death. Uyghurs are being singled out and persecuted and imprisoned in concentration camps. Rural farmers are being forced out of their lands in order to make room for urbanization. They have revoked protections against the hunting of endangered species, and I fear things will only get worse. However, in the face of one of the most powerful countries in the world, we cannot let ourselves bow or compromise to injustice. Moving forward, especially those of us who are able to vote, we need to be even more aware of how our politicians are voting. As Tibetan Americans, we are more than just single-issue voters. The issue of Tibet is an issue of human rights, dignity for all sentient beings, and it is an issue of climate change. Rhetoric is not enough. However, I would also like to state that I'm wary of using military intervention, for using or the threat of using bombs never ends well for normal civilians. There are other more effective measures like boycotting and divestment that we should consider. While in order to achieve legislative change like the Reciprocal Access to Tibet and Eli Wiesel Genocides and Atrocities Prevention Act, bipartisanship is necessary. I have faith that there are political leaders who are committed to political, philosophical, and moral ideologies of human progress. In a year, we will have the 2020 elections. When we decide on who we will support in the upcoming general and local elections, there are various things that we, as Tibetan Americans and allies, need to consider. What are important issues as a citizen that concern you? Climate change, affordable healthcare, affordable housing, a living wage, student loans, some or all of the above, probably even more. We occupy a space of diverse, multi-level identities, and our values and concerns reflect as much. Each of us as individuals need to seek out candidates who will best represent our concerns and not only our local, state, and national interests, but our global interests as well, and then hold them accountable. And for the ones who are not old enough to vote, do not think for even a minute that you're not capable of making change. I am consistently being impressed by people much younger than myself. With you, I see a generation that is filled with active compassion and who is acutely aware that time is not on our side. Whether considering the elections, Olympics, or climate change, I hope that you never doubt your worth, your ability to shape and create change, regardless of where your passions may lead you in life. I think being Tibetan has taught us that we are resilient, courageous, and able to withstand adversity. Being Tibetan is more than just a bloodline. In fact, what makes you Tibetan is more than what just the eye can see. As you move forward, I am confident that you'll be able to find your own path in Tibet's struggle. And as I wrap up, I will leave you with this last thought. The energy and concern for Tibet that has brought everyone here today is encouraging. I'm sure we came here today and will leave today feeling empowered. However, we cannot let these feelings lie dormant, only to awaken 1 year from now. Let us continue to push forward for Tibet. Let us stand in solidarity for all freedom movements, be it Uyghurs, for Hong Kong, for Taiwan, for Native Americans, for Palestine, or for any other movement you find yourselves in. The struggle for justice is universal, and we must stand together. Let us imagine a better world, a better future. Imagine a world where monks and nuns, the elderly, the teenagers, do not have to set themselves on fire in order to get justice. Let us imagine a world where Tibetans live in freedom and dignity. Tibetans outside Tibet do. Why not Tibetans in Tibet? Peg yellow!